Hello, hello, and welcome again to a Beatles show that we call Things We Said Today. This is a weekly podcast in which we talk about all things Beatles, any part of their past, and anything going on in the news today. I'm Ken Michaels, one of the 4 regular co-hosts of the show. You might know me from my other Beatles program syndicated around the world called The Beatles Every Little Thing. And I'm being joined by my 3 other co-hosts. First of all, we have the writer for Beatles Examiner, that being Steve Marinucci. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Ken. Hello, everyone.
And also from Beatle Fan Magazine, who's been with them since the very beginning, writer Al Sussman. Hi, Al.
Hi, Ken. Hello there, everybody.
And also one of the writers for Beatle Fan and musicologist and freelance writer, Alan Kozin. Hey, Alan.
Hey, Ken, and hello, everyone.
On the program this time, we have a special guest who's actually been on our show a couple times before, back in the days, long ago, when it was just Steve and me co-hosting the show. It's Charles Rosenay. He is the event organizer behind Danbury Fields Forever, which is a one-day all-Beatles music festival happening in Danbury, Connecticut at the Charles Ives Center, happening on August the 15th. And he's here to talk about that and maybe some other activities that he's involved with Beatle-wise. Let's welcome Charles Rosenay to the show.
Hey, Ken. Hi, guys.
Hey,
Charles. Hey, Charles.
So glad we can all be together in this lovely, quaint abode.
Palatial studio.
You know, I've always been very close to Charles, but never this close. Because we are doing this partly in my own studio, it's very cramped in here. It's a very small studio, and we're both sharing the same microphone, so...
And the same headphones.
Don't go that far. Anyway, we're here to talk about Danbury Fields to start, and why don't we just tell the folks what Danbury Fields is and how it all got started, and what people can hope to see at Danbury Fields.
It's the 4th year of this Beatles Music Festival, and it's pretty special because the date we selected to have the event, August 15th, as aficionados will know, is the exact to the date 50 years that the Beatles played their first historic concert at Shea Stadium. So we're commemorating that event with a whole day of festivities honoring and playing around the Beatles, including 11 bands, special guests, vendors, and food trucks, and all kind of great things that constitute a festival with the Beatles theme.
Mm-hmm. What made you want to do this kind of thing after so many years of doing Beatle conventions?
Well, the conventions I did for many years and loved doing the conventions. I mean, I think those were, the being able to get people like Pete Best and Cynthia Lennon and Julia Baird, John Lennon's sister, so many guests, and be the first one to get a lot of the guests was a real, feather in my cap, and I'm always proud to be friends of all those guests. But I think the guests ran dry. And, unless you can get a George Martin or you can get a Julian Lennon, there were not a lot of really mass appeal guests left. And I always used to say, when people ask why the Beatles, I would say it's the 3 M's. It's the music, the magic, the memories, and the magic, of course, is that X factor, which you can't put your finger on. The memories for those who lived through it and those, who may have lived through it through their, brothers or sisters or parents or grandparents. Mm-hmm. And also the music. But the music was always first and foremost. And, having brought people to Liverpool for over 30 years where there's a Matthew Street Beatles festival, right, and seeing how the music means everything, it just made sense to really transition everything over to a music festival. And it's worked, and it's been great.
Okay. Now, Steve and I, as I said, we've had you on the show a couple times. I think we'll make some room here for Alan to ask you some questions, because I'm sure they have loads of questions to ask you. We'll start with Alan.
Well, it's it's kind of an unusual kind of program that you have, and I think the fact that looking on the website, the fact that it's outdoors, I think is a little different from the way this kind of thing normally is. When I say this kind of thing, I mean conventions and festivals and things. What is the appeal of the outdoor setting for you?
Yeah, so it's been successful in Liverpool, very successful for Abbey Road on the river.
That's true.
And what it does is it gives people the opportunity to really walk around. They're not trapped, in a ballroom. They're not under four walls. A beautiful day. I mean, they can walk if a band's on for a half hour, then there's a 15-minute break. Another band goes on. If they don't want to hear the early Beatles, they know two bands from then there's going to be classic, latter year Beatles. Mm-hmm. If they want to hear solo, they're going to hear a whole gamut of music. But if they want to take a break, they can go over to have pizza, and they can have ices, and they can have, one of 20 different, food options that are going to be there. They could visit the artists that are there, like Shannon. They could visit the authors that are going to be there. It's very much like a convention, except the focus isn't really on the memorabilia, on the guests. That's all really plays in second part to the many bands many artists and many solo acts that are performing. Last year we did 2 days and had over 20 artists. This year we scaled it back to 1 day. In our fourth year, it's a 1-day show, but there's 11 different artists, ranging from younger bands who are doing their favorite Beatles music in heavy metal style to R&B solo singers who are doing it and belting it out, soul style. So it's it's all about the music, Alan.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's really also sort of like, a fair, like a nice day out, and you hear the music and the theme is just the Beatles. That's what ties it together as a thematic theme, but it's a thematic theme. But,
No, you're right. It's absolutely right. There's something called Gathering of the Vibes, which takes place in Connecticut, the week or two before us. And it's a Grateful Dead themed festival. Well, there's reggae festivals, there's Latin festivals, there's all these themed festivals. And what it really, I think what it does is it brings out a lot more of the generations to have fun. Mm-hmm. You can sit in a seat, or you can lay out on the lawn and have a picnic while you're there. The atmosphere and the vibe is just so different. It's just really a cooler, chill vibe.
Mm-hmm. Are there memorabilia dealers as well?
Oh, yeah, of course. Okay. Yep. There's just a handful, because we don't, really overemphasize that. Mm-hmm. There's a handful of memorabilia dealers, a handful of record and CD dealers. And then there's artisans, and there's a hula hoop exhibit, and there's face painting. So it really meshes well, and it's that new kind of concept that goes beyond the convention, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like fun.
Nothing's as great as a convention. If you're a true fan, you get the best of every world with that. Here, I think it's more laid back, it's more family friendly, it's more let's have a picnic, let's have a festival, let's go to the fair and hear tons of Beatles music.
Mm-hmm.
So, Charles, give us an idea of some of the bands that will be appearing, and also you mentioned that there are going to be some guests.
Yeah, so I'll start with the guests, because last year, of course, for the 50th anniversary of the Beatles and the British invasion, we wanted to pull in something a little different, and we got a gentleman who had never done any personal appearances in the States for I don't know how long. It was Carl Green, who was the bass player for Herman's Hermits, the original founding member and bass player, and he came by, but he only stayed for like an hour, signed autographs, pretty much sold CDs and left. This year we thought, well, it's the 50th anniversary of Shea, but let's stick with that British invasion theme. And there's a gentleman by the name of Hilton Valentine who lives in Connecticut.
Sure.
Happens to be the original lead guitarist of the Animals, is a rock and roll Hall of Famer, and of course there's the Animals, who were the first British invasion band to have a number one hit after the Beatles. So there's that great connection. Well, he's not just coming for an hour, he's coming the whole day, and he's going to meet fans and talk about the 60s and the Beatles and the British invasion and the Animals and all that stuff, but also sign autographs and sell CDs. And we just found out he's going to, perform a few songs with the bands. Now, the bands, I think he's going to be performing with the Blue Meanies, who are well known in New Jersey and all over the East Coast, because they do Beatle tributes, Monkey tributes, Beach
Kinks.
Boys, Kinks. Yeah, they're a real great 60s band. For this show, they're doing all 1965. They're doing the Help album, plus other 65 chestnuts. The Hoffners, who are the other headliners, are a Connecticut band, and they're doing the whole Shea Stadium set in the Shea outfits. So those are the two headliners. Then we've got a band from Long Island called Penny Lane, who are doing the Pepper outfits and doing the Pepper Magical Mystery Tour era. We've got a group called Number 9 who do a lot of obscure deep cuts. They're a 6-7-piece ensemble. They fashion themselves like the Fab Four. They don't try to look the part, but they sound great. And then there's a female-led band called the Navels, who, when they're not doing a Beatles tribute, actually do Stevie Nicks tribute. So it's really amazing stuff. We've got a group called the Strictly Beatles, and they're doing B-sides. We've got School of Rock coming in, and those are the, best students of the School of Rock School. Yeah. And they're doing like the heavier stuff. Yeah. They're doing the Come Together, Abbey Road, heavier stuff. We've got Nikita Waller, who's that female R&B soul singer I told you about. We've got a guy named Eric Herbst from a Connecticut new wave sort of rockin' original band called Dizzy Fish. And then we have Ken's two favorite bands, and I say that because they're really amazing when it comes to solo material. It's the Onos from Massachusetts and Afterfab, also from New England, and they really go deep into the Beatles solo material, and it really fills the whole gamut of, adding every bit of the Beatles from early years through later years through solo years.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Sounds good.
That's the one thing that I appreciate the most because, you get a taste of all the different bands from our area and you decide which ones you like the most and maybe you end up following them. Mm-hmm. And there's a site that I look up. There's a Facebook page called Beatles Tribute Fans that I go to, which lists tribute groups from around the world and where they're playing. And I use that so that I can report which ones are playing in New England.
Oh, wow.
So there are certain ones like Penny Lane I've heard about for quite a while but never got to see from Long Island. And some of the bands I've heard about mainly through you and from Danbury Fields. And After Fab is a wonderful band playing just solo music. They're strictly solo. And the Onos mix up the group with the solo music. There's all different types of bands. There's even some that, as you like to call them, they're suits and boots bands.
Who will dress the part, wear the wigs and the flat. And then there's the others who, really it's all about the music for them. They don't care if they're exactly, have the Vox and that they don't need the McCartney, Hofner bass, but they, capture the sound perfectly or their derivations of it. Some of the bands just change it up and make it, take their unique style of their normal playing and just do Beatles songs to their own style. So it really is someone who wants to spend a day and get the full gamut. The doors open at noon, they close at 8 o'clock. During that period of 11 acts, they're really getting a whole wide variety, the whole color spectrum of the Beatles catalog.
Yeah, I love that aspect too when bands do their own arrangements. Certain bands do that. What was the heavy metal band kind of from last year? Oh, Genetic Control.
We had them for a few years, and they're very popular. This is actually the bands that we had the first 3 years in a row. Even though we love them, there's them and Fools on the Hill. We just decided to mix it up because there were so many bands vying for slots and vying for to do a set. And like Penny Lane from Long Island never had a chance to use them before. The Blue Meanies never had a chance to use them before. Right. So we brought back a few and then brought in a whole lot of new ones.
Yeah. Steve, you got a question?
Yeah, Charles. I mean, you've been doing between the conventions and everything. You've been doing this for quite a while. How has the dynamic of fans evolved over time? I mean, you're talking a demographic, number one, but I mean, just the whole issue of who attends these things.
I
realize. I was going to say, I realize you're kind of going for families now, but I mean, just in general, how does it go?
Well, I've always been a proponent of spreading the gospel and keeping the spirit alive as much as possible. And I've always tried to make everything I do very family friendly, and try to encourage new generations. Who knows if a fan comes and, here's a Beatle band for the first time, that, we're not winning over new fans. I'm not a Beatle, and it's not something that I don't know if they want to be done. I'm sure they would to perpetuate it, but I've always wanted that to be the case. But the best way I can assess what you're asking is through our tours. I mean, we do the tours to London and Liverpool every summer. We've been doing those over 30 years. And the magical history tours that we do, obviously the demographic has gotten older. When it was 30s and 40s, a couple years ago, it's people in their 50s and 60s, and it's something that I hear the term more often. It's the bucket list. We want to go on your tour. We've always wanted to. We had to wait till we retired, and now we're going. But even in those cases, it's parents bringing their kids, it's grandparents bringing their kids and their kids. So I just love the fact that it's multi-generational, and I think that's how it's changed. When we started, I started my first Beatles convention in '78, a couple of years after Joe Pope and Mark Lapidus, before, just right after they did. And it was a lot of teenagers, a lot of college kids, a lot of people in their 20s and 30s. And the Beatles were all individually with us. There was always still a chance they would reunite. There was always still the chance that they were going to live forever. That's changed. And as it's changed, I think, the realities of collecting have also changed, and the realities of, who's going to come to an event. We would always say, who knows? We sent an invitation to Paul and to John. They might show up. Of course they were never going to show up. But, there was always that one in a zillion chance that somehow they would, just do something goofy and show up in New Haven, Connecticut for a convention or something like that. But having said all that, I guess it's just the demographic has aged a bit. And in that, we hope that they've passed it down, to the other generations, to their children and grandchildren and younger siblings, and that they'll be, I remember, a few years into the conventions, people would say, and it's what they probably asked Paul, when will the bubble burst? The famous video clip. And they asked me, why, is this going to, go on a few years? And I go, well, why not? It's the 70s and 80s now. It's gone on 10, 20 years. Why wouldn't it go 30 or 40 years? And it's gone 50 years, and it's amazing. And I hope it just still goes on, because it brings me such joy when I bring someone to Liverpool and they're walking into the Cavern for the first time, or they're seeing Penny Lane or Strawberry Fields, or they come to an event like this and they come over and say, Charles, I'm so glad you had it. My grandson loved the Beatle music and loved the whole atmosphere. And that's what it's all about. It's just the joy that it brings to the others who are part of the event.
Since you're bringing up the magical history tours, let's just make a departure to that for a while. We'll go back to Danbury Fields in a bit. But in addition to all the incredible sights that you've shown in Liverpool and London, you've had other trips. And this particular year, you're going to Hamburg.
Yeah.
You've also been to Scotland as well.
Amsterdam, right.
Right. What have been the most special for you, looking back all these years to those incredible locations, historic locations?
Interestingly enough, most of the surprise and the best things weren't planned. It was, going to London and finding out that Julian was doing a signing at a toy store,
right,
and going to meet him and getting his autograph and hanging out with him. It was, on certain shows we would go to, when we do the August trip every single year, but then we would also do trips to see McCartney, and we'd do trips to see Ringo. We would do all those tours. And, you never knew who you would meet. That was always for me the great thing. And sadly, so many are gone.
Right.
Uncle Charlie Lennon, Ringo's stepdad Harry. You can go down the list of people like Alf Bicknell and Alistair Taylor and Bob Wooler.
Yeah.
And the timing, I was just going to say, and now we've lost Cilla. So there's just so many people who we had the great fortune of meeting and, hanging out with. I mean, one of my personal best memories, and God rest her soul, we went for the first time to the Casbah. And Pete opened his house to the fans for the first time, and we met his brothers, Rory and Rogue. But Mona said, you guys are going to stay. You're going to be my guests. She made it a party. She put on music. She danced with us. She fed us. That was really probably one of my highlights. Pete Best, we became friends, from that day on, and he came to a lot of my conventions and was a real great person. But that was pretty much the catalyst of the whole bringing people over to Liverpool, was meeting them there and then bringing them to the conventions here. But the Mona dancing was one of my great memories.
Do you have a Scylla story, Charles?
I don't have a Scylla story at all. She was as much as she was tightly connected to the Beatles. She was purely London and purely television and purely, BBC and all that. there were times that she was invited to come to the convention, and it was always one of those things she said she would eventually get to, the Liverpool convention, and sadly never made it. But she was so loved in Liverpool, and everybody, who was ever had anything to do with her, be it Alan Williams in the early days or any of the people who were tied in with the Cavern, the Cavern's original doorman, Paddy Delaney, they all always had the greatest things to say about Cilla Black, who of course became Cilla White, who became Cilla Black.
I just published some pictures this morning. I mean, Liverpool is just awash in tributes. There's just, from the Cavern to, they've got the flags flying at half staff over there. It's pretty amazing.
Well, she went beyond the Beatles, she went beyond the Cavern. She became, a countrywide, well-known celebrity. She was, I don't want to go as far as to say she was the Oprah of England, but she was certainly of that ilk, maybe a Barbara Walters level celebrity.
That's a good turn. That's a good point. I think that gets up there with what she was doing. Yeah, I mean, she was just so much a part of their culture. It was great. It was really good she had. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you had asked what was my personal. I think for the fans, every few years we're just lucky and fortuitous, and its timing works out that we're able to get not just to Abbey Road and to write on the wall and to cross the street, but we've been blessed to get inside an actual recording session at Abbey Road Studios. And that's pretty much that's the highlight of the trip when we can pull that off. And unfortunately, we can't pull it off many years because there's a lot of times that the London Symphony Orchestra or Elton John or Paul or whoever have the studio blocked for months on end. And we can't get near getting inside. But the times we did, that was probably a highlight for the people who've gone multiple times. As you guys know, we've been doing it over 30 years, the tour to Liverpool and London. And there's people who've gone like 20 times, who've gone because every year there's something different. They're going to either meet someone new or we go to different places that we hadn't gone to before. And we have to keep it fresh and have to continue to do different things for those who come back from year to year to year.
Well, I have a feeling that there's one that probably stands out, one tour that stands out more than any of the others, and that would probably be 1983, right?
Of course, because it was my first.
Well, not only that, but also, and you can fill in the blanks there.
Tell me, what, Al, because
wasn't that the year that for the first time they opened up Studio 2 and had that?
So two things. That was the first year they opened up Studio 2, and I guess because I've been there, several times after, the first one should be my most memorable. But my best memory of A3, and you won't believe this, the Cavern had not been rebuilt yet. It had not been restructured. I walked down Matthew Street, and it was like walking down a scary alley. And there was no, there were no Beatles shops, and there was no, club on every inch playing Beatles music, but all the buildings were boarded over and scaffolded, and really it was like you were walking through tenement slums. And I remember the people I was with, Tom Frangione, myself, all Tom King, real true Beatle fans, put our ears to the walls and just imagined. And that was pretty special because we were just imagining Love of the Loved coming out of there, or early just live Hamburg-like sounds emanating from the Cavern. And we walked away. People must have thought we were like all drunk, which is not a big deal there, but they must have thought we were, really flying high, because we were walking away just smiling because we had, experienced something internally that no one else probably did unless they were there at that time, which was after the original Cavern was gone and before the new Cavern was built. So it was a pretty weird time for us. Yeah.
That's a great story. That's a great story. Not to go far off track, but Charles, when we met in Vegas for that McCartney show at the Joint, that was pretty awesome. That show was just, he was like in everybody's face. That was amazing.
So I saw Paul in Birmingham in England, and that was at the NEC, and it was the first time I met him. So that's my favorite concert experience. But as far as a pure show, being close, perfection, it was the joint in Las Vegas. Anyone who was there will say, even if you saw 20 McCartney shows, that was the one.
Yeah,
Steve is always raving about it, you know.
Yeah,
that's because Steve, you and I got to hang together. That's why it was great.
We did. We were right in the middle of that small little room and got our ears blasted out, especially when he did Live and Don't Die. It was incredible. It was, and I'm really, I've asked why they don't release that thing. I mean, that is got to be one of his, that show is just so astounding. And the YouTube videos don't do it justice. They really, really don't. Not even close.
Is it really a question of the performance, or is it just that it was so intimate?
That's a good question. I bet it was because it was so intimate. There's no place, I think, in that venue where you're more than 400 feet from the artist.
Right. And he did, and like I said, he did Live and Let Die. So, I mean, and that was loud. That was, and I don't know about you, Charles, but I didn't have earplugs. And I felt that one for a couple of days. I remember.
Now, didn't you see Paul in Liverpool live?
Yep.
What was that experience like?
Well, that's different because you know that he's always a little more emotional about that. I mean, one of the times is when he did that Give Peace a Chance medley.
Right.
And he always does something special. When he's in Liverpool, most of the time he's also going to Lipa and visiting the students. Right. So, we're kind of camping out most of the days of his concert at the Liverpool Institute of Performing Arts, and we always get, a close encounter. It's either a wave or a photo or a, hey gang, hey Paul. But his concerts there, I mean, there's so many memorable shows, at the Ed Sullivan Theater,
right?
At Shea, at City Field. There's just everyone, and you got to hand it to him because he tries to play different venues that he hasn't played, and he tries to, break new ground with the locations he picks. So, but the joint, there was something definitely magical about that, and it was probably the intimacy of the event.
Yeah. In fact, Alan had talked about, and I was there too at the Ed Sullivan Theater for Up Close. Mm-hmm. So we both got to witness that. That was just so special. That was around
great.
The off the ground time.
Yep.
Yeah, that was
great.
It
was a snowy day, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And we had to brave the elements to make it from our respective areas to get to the Sullivan Theater, but that was worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Alan, you have a question?
So, looking forward, to you've now sort of hit on an approach to doing these the summer outdoor things and also your travel things. Do you have anything different planned in the future? Do you have any sort of changes that you're contemplating for either?
Well, I'd like to do. We rebranded the Danbury Fields Forever event. Well, it's obvious why it's called that. It's in Danbury, Connecticut, and it's a play on Strawberry Fields Forever. Mm-hmm. But we've been rebranding it the Fab Four Music Festival in the hopes that we could do it, in maybe other places, maybe in a Philly or a Boston or a market that, we can get a producer to perhaps package it and we bring the same, theme to another place. I'd love to do that. We're also going to continue the Beatles tours, obviously. Those are going to go on, God willing, another 30, 40, 50 years. Mm-hmm. Why not, right? What we did in 2010, and this is a very local event, we did a tribute to John Lennon. We called it Remember Lennon Imagine 70 because it was his 70th birthday in 2010. Mm-hmm. And we had the event right on October 9th. And this year we're doing the same thing. On October 9th, we're doing Remember Lennon Imagine 75. And we get a great John Lennon tribute artist and do a concert of what might have been. It's John, if he actually ever did tour, what it would have been like from this perspective of this artist. And that's in New Haven at a place called the College Street Music Hall on October 9th. But looking ahead, I guess sticking with the same things and hopefully always making them better and giving more avenues for, fans to enjoy the music the way others have in the past.
Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, I think you've got a pretty short turnaround between Danbury Fields Forever and your next tour, right?
Yeah. Well, normally we have the event in July,
Right.
and it gives me, a month or a month and a half before the Liverpool trip, before the Magical History Tour. This year, we're talking about 1 week.
Oh boy.
When the event ends to when we go on the 22nd. We're going to Hamburg first, as Ken mentioned. Then we're going to London. Then we're going to Liverpool. So August is definitely, between these interviews and between those events, it's definitely Beatle month for me. And it's Beatle week in Liverpool. Some people say, well, why do you go in August? Why don't you go another time of year? That's when the city of Liverpool really embraces the Beatles and embraces the tens upon 10,000s of fans who come, from all over the world, not just the U.S. I mean, people are coming from every nation, and there's 150, 200 bands from all countries who come together in Liverpool. So that's when we do it, and it's not allowing a lot of time in between to breathe, but it'll give me enough time to pack anyway.
How long have the Beatle conventions, the week-long ones, been running now in Liverpool?
Since '85.
Okay.
There were tiny ones before that. The Mersey Beatle, they were done by Jim and Liz Hughes, and they were very small and very intimate. But when Cavern City Tours took them over, that's really when the whole city, and from there it became the Beatles story developed, and all this really great things in Liverpool really, came about, and they really took to tourism. Before that, it was like, you talk to a Scouser on the street, and I'm not going to do the accent because I wouldn't do it justice, but he would say, the Beatles left us. We don't want the Beatle fans here. And, this was these 90-year-old geezers who were the actual Liverpool. That was the consensus of so many of the people there. And that was turned around. They westernized real quickly when they realized, how many dollars can be spent and how many lira and how many yen.
Right.
For Beatle fans, and it's good it is, because it gives us such a great platform for attending. In the first year or two, in '83 and '84, I mean, we did a lot of research, but we had to find the Iron Rail, we had to find the Casbah, we had to find all these clubs where the Beatles played in their homes. And now we lay it out. We make the fans' job. There's no job. We take them to every possible place, and it's just it's like on a silver platter handed out, and they're able to go to the places that they really couldn't get to on their own, but have always dreamed about going. They've seen the pictures in the postcards, seen them in the books, and and heard about them in the songs, and we bring it to life in the trip.
When you do the tours, I'm just curious, especially in Liverpool and London, do you sort of incorporate with people like Richard Porter in London and Jackie Spencer, in Liverpool?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. So Richard Porter we did for many years, and Renee Van Harlem from Beatles Unlimited now runs the London one, and it's no slight to Richard. We love Richard. Renee, it just gets to more places and, fits in more in the schedule. We might use Richard again in the future. For Liverpool, I think Jackie did early trips, but we would mix it up. Some years, John's sister Julia Baird would take us on trips. We would go for the celebrity tour guide, and in fact, the past few years, and we're using him again this year, it's David Bedford, the author of Lydia. So again, Jackie Spencer's great. We'd like to think David Bedford's a little different. I'm not going to say better because I don't want to put down. But yeah, there's a lot of tour guides to choose from. We try to go with the best possible one to give the fans the best possible experience for two reasons. Again, the ones who are repeating it, we want them to find places they've never been to. But the ones who are going first time, this might be the only time they're ever going to go to Liverpool. It might be the only time they'll be out of the country. We want to make sure it's the most comprehensive, most complete, most enjoyable trip they're on. Everything I do with the tours, I try to mix the educational, the informative, but fun. On the bus we're showing Beatle videos, we're doing trivia, we're having sing-alongs. I try to, make it so personable and fun that they're going to go home and say, oh my God, this was the best trip I've ever been on. I couldn't be happier. And one of the sidebars to all these tours is people who go on the trip, and Ken could attest to this, stay friends for years thereafter. I mean, they become lifelong friends
Right.
because they've just shared, a trip where it's a shared love of the Beatles.
Yeah, some of my wife's closest friends are the ones that went on your trip
Right.
back in 91 or 92, I think it was. So, yeah, definitely. And it's a great choice to have David Bedford help you out. He's done
great.
sensational work with his books, and he's not only a huge Beatle fan, but he's Liverpudlian through and through, and proud of it.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about Hamburg and the times you've been to Hamburg and what that experience has been like.
So when you think Hamburg, you think of 4 clubs.
Mm-hmm.
You think of Star Club, Kaiser Keller, Indra, and the Top 10 Club. Would you believe 3 of those clubs still stand? The Top 10 has changed its name many times. The Kaiser Keller is like one of the top discos in Hamburg. And the Indra Club is exactly as it was, and we have a party there when we go. We bring in a Beatles band, and we recreate what it might have been like when the Beatles played at the Indra. And then we really walk in the footsteps of the Beatles. We go to all the places they visited, all the places they played, the site of the Bambino that burnt down because of the Beatles, supposedly. But we also, what's really wonderful is we spend our time staying at a hotel right in the St. Pauli district. So we're in the heart of the Reeperbahn, which is still a red light district, which is still the most colorful underground red light district probably in the world, maybe that in Amsterdam. And so we're right in the hub of where the Beatles stayed and lived and breathed, those savage young Beatles before they became famous and Brian cleaned them up. And that's really a great, beginning. Whereas that was the prelude to the Beatles, coming back to Liverpool and then conquering London and the rest of the world. We pretty much do that in that we do Hamburg first, and then we go to London, and then we sneak into Henley, and we spend some time in George's hometown, Henley-on-Thames, and then we go to Liverpool for an entire week. So it's really a complete experience.
It's jam-packed. There's so much to do in that. It's 2 weeks long?
It's 12 days.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody want to ask a question for Charles?
I got to ask these guys. Have you been? Have you been to Liverpool, Alan, Al, and Steve?
Yes, I have.
It's been a while. It was 89. That's the only time I was out over there.
Wow.
I have to say no. I have
Really?
not been. I have not been.
You should go. It's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
I know people keep saying that to me, and who knows?
Steve, go to liverpooltours.com. You'll find all the information you need.
Okay.
And I went in 91, but it wasn't your trip.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to make it one of your trips.
Right.
But, yeah, I didn't spend enough time in Liverpool. I spent more time in London, actually. But, no, I definitely want to go back. I can't wait to go back.
I went in 91 and 99. 91 for the Liverpool Oratorio. Although I got actually a quick tour of the place with Mark Lewis and driving around in his car and pointing out, the Beatles played in that building on September 3rd, 1962 at 3:05 p.m. Okay, that's good, Mark. And then in 99 was for the Cavern show. And again, I went with Mark. And that was actually a lot of fun. Although, since I think he was at the time probably either still working for Club Sandwich or somehow still close to them. So I just went to the concert, which I was covering for the Times, and he went off and partied with them afterwards. So I didn't get to go do that because,
You didn't go during Beatle Week, but I think you had 2 primo experiences between the Oratorio and Paul's Cavern.
I have to say, the day of the Cavern show, it was really kind of interesting because we're walking up Matthew Street, and of course it's completely different than the boarded up place you described from the earlier time you went.
Right.
Now it is Beatle shops all over the place. But besides Beatle shops all over the place, you're walking down Matthew Street in the middle of the afternoon, the day of this Cavern Club concert, and there's Alan Williams walking past, and there's someone, and you feel sort of like you're in a live action version of Yellow Submarine or something, where you just sort of recognize everyone walking past you. It was very interesting.
And you see the grapes, and you see all the places, of course.
Yeah.
You sure Alan was walking by? He wasn't stumbling by?
Well, he was sort of floating by, and
Floating by, yeah.
And there was
God bless him. He's outlasted a lot of his contemporaries.
sure.
You know, we've still got Bill Harry, we still have Sam Leach, and we still have Alan Williams.
Yeah. How was Sam doing? Because he took a fall recently, didn't he?
Sam took a fall at the previous Liverpool Beatles convention and broke a hip, and he's thank God recuperating very nicely. You know. Yep. He fell behind a dealer's table on over one of the table extenders. Ooh. And we had to be rushed to the hospital. It's too bad because he looks forward to the conventions. He gets to see old friends, meet fans, sign autographs. It's too bad when some of them who, Charlie Lennon, I think, stayed alive a lot longer because he couldn't wait till August when the Beatle fans would come over. Yeah. There was this beautiful old gal named Margaret who lived in one of Ringo's homes, and she would just delight when Beatle fans would come and knock on her door, and she'd let them in the house and say, well, I'm a bigger Elvis fan than I am a Beatles fan, but come look in where Ringo's apartment was, you know? And she just passed last year, unfortunately. But I think, she lived till about 112, and I think she got another 20 years out of the fact that she was able to make Beatle fans happy.
Wow. From what I understand, at those Beatle conventions in Liverpool, you do have a lot of family members of the Beatles wandering around kind of unannounced. Yeah,
Brian Epstein's family members would come. You would have members of the Beatles families. And, what's really great about Liverpool, aside from that, is someone in Alan, said he saw Alan Williams on the street. Alan just comes to the convention. Bob Woolard would just come to the convention and like you and me, just hang out, visit the exhibitors. Even when they weren't planned guests, Sam Leach used to just come to the conventions. And why? Because they're in town and, that's what they did. Now some of them, like Pete Best's family, they have the Best Fest during that time. So they really gear all their activities around a tourist coming to visit. So there's some that wouldn't now, stop by as they would. Mark Lewison will come when he has, a new book and he's an invited guest. But Julia's there, Julia's there every single year and she meets fans and she couldn't be more personable. It's really great. It's really great that the people of Liverpool, it took them a few years, but really embraced the whole Beatledom and its own cottage industry there now, but in a good way, only in a good way.
Would you say the conventions in Liverpool have gotten bigger and bigger still?
The Beatle Week has. Now the Beatles convention is just one part of it. And then there's a mini Beatles flea market at another hotel the day before. And then there's the music festival the day of. But each night there's major concerts at the London Philharmonic. There's themed concerts. It might be Mark Hudson with Denny Lane with Joey Molland doing a show with special guests. And then the next night might be a tribute to Wings, and it's nothing but Wings material for the entire night. Every year they come up with different concert events so that along with all the day sightseeing and all the day activities, there's always great things to do at night. It's a plug, but if anyone hasn't been to Liverpool, whether you go on your own or with another tour group or with me, go there. You got to go once in your life. I've had people just step onto the Penny Lane streets or see the gates of Strawberry Fields and just break down crying. I mean, it happened to me involuntarily there. It happened to me in Israel when I was at the Western Wall. You don't know why these things happen, but it overcomes you. It's probably a lifetime of love for the Beatles. And then when you're at these places, like John's home or Paul's home, which we go inside, it really, it hits you and you get that great feeling. And, you know what? It's maybe the culmination of a lifetime of loving the Beatles' music and them as people, and then when you're in their home, it really has a great effect.
Yeah, it's really true. I mean, like all of us, as a kid, I read all of the biographies that had come out. Julius Fast and Anthony Scaduto, and then even before the 100 Davies, and they're all describing Strawberry Field and Penny Lane and John's house and Paul's house and the neighborhoods. But, and I have a pretty good imagination, but somehow getting on site and seeing it's completely different than you imagine. It's because I guess you bring whatever whatever your own feeling about a town like Liverpool theoretically might be, but seeing it in person, it was every single thing was a bit different than I had imagined, even though I'd seen pictures, you know. So yeah, I agree. Everyone should go.
And in some ways, I don't know if it was better to have gone in the 80s when a lot of it was imagination, and Liverpool was, I don't want to use the word seedier, but a lot more gray. Yeah. A lot more, maybe the streets weren't as well swept. And now you go there, and Liverpool 1, which is by the docks, it's as fancy and as high class and as cultural as any metropolitan city in the world. I mean, you wouldn't recognize it if you went in 1983 and then went back in 2013, right, when Liverpool celebrated its birthday, and when it was the cultural capital of the world. It really it metamorphosed overnight. It became, a real cosmopolitan, high class city, and it still is that, but yet it retains its old charm because the salt of the people, the people are still Liverpudlians, and they'll still tell it like it is, and you can see where Lennon got his wit, and Paul got his savvy, and Ringo got his humor. You still see it because it's in the people, and that's what I always said was my favorite thing about Liverpool. Yeah, of course, Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields and the Beatles' homes, but the people themselves. I mean, the stories you get when you walk down the streets where they filmed, some of the, even in London, even the places they filmed A Hard Day's Night or Help, and near Twickenham Studios, when the people come out and tell their stories about when the Beatles were filming in those places. The great thing is to hear those stories and experience it firsthand, and getting that feeling that you get when you see these places that you've always dreamed about and you see them for the first time. It's really special.
Oh, that magic feeling.
Yeah. Really.
You reminded me just now of one of my treasured memories of when I went to Liverpool. I was on a bus tour, and we stopped in front of the Empress Pub, which is where the front cover of the Sentimental Journey album from Ringo was taken. And there was a boy who drove by in his bicycle, and he looked like, teenager with a cap on, kind of like the same kind of cap that John had on in A Hard Day's Night. And he stopped in front of me, and he said, "Ringo Starr used to live here, mate." And he drove off. So very friendly and personable. I always love that.
That's great, because a lot of the times we'll drive up in our, yellow magical mystery tour bus, and we'll pull up on that block, and we'll all take pictures of the Empress Pub, and locals will come up and go, "Why are you taking pictures of this rundown bar?" Well, hello, it's the cover, and we'll whip out the photo. It's the cover of the album. This has sentimental reasons to us.
Right. Let's just go back a little bit to Danbury Fields. You were talking about some of the special guests that you're going to have there. Tell the folks who Shannon is, because she's an amazing artist. Tell the folks more about her.
Well, that's a good segue, because she had a lot to do with Liverpool. She's been coming over as an artist for many years and is the official artist of Liverpool. She designed all the rooms at the Hard Day's Night Hotel, and she designs the images for the Beatles convention. It's always her artwork, and if anyone's seen Shannon's artwork, you know how great it is. It's like real life. You don't know you're looking at an airbrushed piece of art. It looks like an actual photo. Yeah. And we've had the pleasure of having Shannon design our event logo for Danbury Fields Forever now for the 4th year. She also comes to the events where she does her artwork on the spot. And the past couple years, she's also, a lot of people don't know, is she's a great musician. And she's jumped on stage and jammed with some of the bands. And one of the people she would jam with a lot was a gentleman by the name of Dennis Ferrante, who was John Lennon's engineer, a Grammy Award-winning engineer and producer. And he passed within the past year, he passed away. And we're dedicating this year's show to him and to Sid Bernstein. Dennis, of course, because he's been to our events and he's been a special guest and a dear friend. And Sid, who was like an uncle to me for so many years, and such a dear and wonderful, sweet fellow. And if it wasn't for him, who knows? Would there have been a Carnegie Hall or a Shea? Would the Beatles have exploded the way they did? definitely a part of the Beatles' history. And with him not being here and us doing a 50th anniversary tribute to the Shea Stadium show, definitely had to dedicate the event to him.
Yeah, it's such an honor for me to meet those two gentlemen and to interview them. And Dennis, in particular, was so supportive of my shows through the years, and a guest went out when he was on my show in New Jersey on WDHA.
Oh, wow.
And in fact, the last show I did there was with Dennis and May Pang together.
Yes.
So, yeah. You also have a special guest and someone that we've had here on our show on Things We Said Today, and that's Candy Leonard.
We have two authors. We have Vica Winters, and we also have Candy Leonard. And Candy has written the Beatleness book, and they'll be there to have their books. You can get them autographed and get them signed and get a copy of their books. They'll be there, and it's really Shannon, the two authors, and Hilton Valentine is our very special guest of honor, of course, from the Animals. But, they're hanging out. They're not there, with long lines and, here's the book next, here's the next, they're not there as robots signing books and moving on. They're there to hang out and have fun and listen to the music. And the setting is such that where the bands are playing, even if you're visiting the vendors or you're grabbing bite to eat, or if the kids are on some of the rides, there's like the carnival rides there, or you're visiting the vendors, you're still hearing the music because it's a band shell and it's such a beautiful setting that no matter where you are, you're still hearing the Beatles music coming from the stage. Can we give the website for the Danbury Fields Forever Music Festival?
Absolutely.
So it's www.fab4 Music Festival, and it's FAB, the number 4, not spelled out, Fab4 Music Festival. And that lists the lineup. It lists all the guests. People want to stay over if they're traveling from, anywhere. Danbury is very, very close proximity to New York and Jersey. It's, traveling distance from all of New England. There's a hotel offering, I think, $79 overnight accommodations right nearby. And then we're going to have a Beatles party late night. So when the event ends at 8 o'clock at Ives Concert Park in Danbury, we'll all head over to the hotel and have a sing-along and continue the fun there.
Okay.
Cool.
And also, this is a minor thing, but I'm one of the MCs. I'm one of the MCs for the show.
You think you are. I'm sorry. I've heard Al, and I've heard Steve. You are out of the
Okay. You got the hook.
Uh-oh.
Okay. You three are taking my place
It's
then.
all in jest. I'm honored that Ken Michaels and Gary Thoreau of Rewound Radio are our official MCs. I used to MC all the shows myself in the day when we'd have conventions and all that. But as I'm losing my voice over the years, and as there's so many other things to run around and do, I finally found someone I can trust, who I know is going to keep the things moving and add humor and add trivia and make the crowd happy. And Ken just does a great job. You guys would be proud of him. He's great having him as our MC for the 4th year in a row.
It's been fun the last 4 years. I get a blast out of it. I really do, just to see the different generations of people come there and enjoy the show. You get to see new Beatle fans being introduced to the music.
Of course.
And like we said, all the different types of Beatle bands spanning through the years. And, different approaches in the tributes. So I like that aspect of it. So any last questions, guys?
Come on, Al Sussman, you've got to give me one.
Okay, well, let me ask you. Actually, this is an old memory, not a particularly happy memory either. But I know we've talked about it at some point. One of your first conventions in Boston, was in December of 1980.
Right after.
Tell us about
Right after we lost John.
Right, tell us about that.
Wow. So the question was, does the show go on or not? I was a consultant for that, and I was the MC for the event, and it was a company in Boston called Nostalgia Productions, and they'd been promoting it for a year. And they had the old Bradford Hotel as the venue, which is where the conventions were when Joe Pope did them in the mid-'70s. And this was, we had the bands, everything was in place. And John, passes. And then what do we do? And we thought it would be, is the word cathartic? We thought it would be more important to have the event. And so people can commiserate, could be together and to have a shared experience and to celebrate not his passing, of course not, but to celebrate his life. And we went on with the show, and it was a very heavy, it was a tough show to produce. but it had its own special feeling. No event, no convention has ever, had that kind of an element to it. And anyone who was at it walked away, knowing they were at something special. But, I'll tell you what, I would rather not have that feeling and that not have happened. I'd rather have been just a lesser attended, unimportant Boston Beatle convention than what it turned out to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And imagine all the other Beatle conventions that happened not shortly after that, and how difficult it was for everyone who put those together.
Yeah,
Right,
That's
of
for
course.
sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, Charles, it has been a blast to have you here on the show. Next time, try to do it from your home.
We will figure it out. Steve and I are going to spend the next 364 days working on it.
Okay. So once again, it's Danbury Fields Forever. It is on August the 15th at the Charles Ives Center in Danbury, Connecticut. If you want more information, you go to the website
www.fab4musicfestival.com, and the website for the Beatle tours is liverpooltours.com, and they can always call. I mean, we have someone who answers the phones all the time at 203-795-4737. I'm usually the one answering the phone.
Mm-hmm. And Fab 4 Music Festival, the 4 is the number.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay. So thanks so much for joining us. I look forward to being with you. And, well, by the time this posts, it's going to be in about a week.
Great.
So we hope to see as many people there as possible.
And guys, now that I'm with Ken and I'm in his office and I'm recording this with his studio, I'm going to move in here.
No, you are not. Fat chance of that. You are dreaming, pal. All right. This has been so much fun. Thank you, Charles, for being here.
Thank you.
And on behalf of Steve Marinucci, Alan Kozin, and Al Sussman, this is Ken Michaels for Things We Said Today. Thanking all of you for listening. And we'll see you next time.